Hey everyone, how's it going? Cyber here. Today I've got some Formula 3 action on LFM for you. These are the Formula 3 cars at Londrina. Now I can't say this is really a course that I had ever heard of, nevertheless raced on, so it was fun trying to learn a new track. Before we get too far into this video, I do want to pause it here and ask what you think the best course of action would be for this particular setup. We're coming into what I believe is T1 and I've got somebody on my inside. So should I go around the outside or should I try and fall in behind them? Let's find out what I did. My galaxy brain play was to just completely miss T1 altogether. Don't even bother to turn for it, but luckily I did not get possessed by the devil like the guy behind me did, so proof that you can always miss T1 and somebody else will always have it worse than you. This causes me to drop from my qualifying position in P2 all the way back to P12, so now it's my job to try and race back up the field or get through the grid. And making a mistake like this is not going to help me do that, as I lose it essentially at the same spot on the next lap, just on the second half of that corner. That T1, T2 combo, if you can call it that, it's basically kind of an opening chicane that's a little bit steeper than normal. Eventually ends up becoming my arch nemesis of this track, and it's really the corner I struggled on pretty much the most, outside of another corner I'll point out later. As we can see P10 losing it, and then coming around the corner and seeing P9 facing the complete wrong way, forcing me to go wide. Unfortunately, I can't wrangle the car in time, end up in the grass, and then end up back on the track in a very dangerous setup. Now, luckily, the two cars behind were able to find a way around me without causing a catastrophic crash, and on the next lap, we see P10 losing it on that corner. The one thing I will say about this car is it is extremely easy to lose the rear by getting on the gas too early or getting on the gas too aggressively, especially around these corners of this track. I don't know really if it's the track makeup or if it's the car handling that causes this problem, but you really had to be careful in this car going around certain corners so you wouldn't lose complete control. Now, the flip side of that is that it actually made it a really good training tool to practice and hone in skills on things like trail braking and gradual throttle application. As we see me trying to back out of this corner, not trying to go side by side with P9, but he ends up hitting the lip on the second half of that corner and ends up in the wall, giving me the position anyway. Now here's an awkward situation that ends up happening. We can see P8, I'm coming up behind him, he dips towards the outside, so I'm thinking, okay, he's gonna let me go. But then as we come around the corner, he ends up hitting the throttle in kind of an unexpected way, so I end up making a minor bit of contact with the front of his car, trying to duck kind of in front of him to make the next corner. Not really sure what was going on there, or if he actually was trying to let me go, or if he simply was just losing control and had to catch the car in a slide. Let me know what you think down below, but I originally thought he was letting me go there, so a bit awkward, and sorry to P8 if they do end up seeing this video. On the next lap, we can see P7 going deep into the penultimate corner, so I'm trying to take advantage of that, coming around the inside of that corner, then the outside of the final hairpin, which is kind of sketchy to try and hold. Luckily, we're able to make the move stick, and down the front straight, I'm able to pull a little bit of a gap between them and hold out, now moving myself into P7. The hunt would then continue on the next lap, going into T1 yet again, our good old friend, or T1 or T2, whatever this is going to be. But you can see P6 having a bit of trouble that I had earlier in the race. Trying to wrangle that corner can cause really a bit of issues trying to go on around either them with too much speed or too much confidence, so that corner really kind of humbles you. So I end up moving up into P6 after missing the corner myself, but luckily it was just an incident and not an actual off track. The main difference is that incident points can be assigned to any number of different scenarios that happen during a race, like going off track or hitting somebody, versus an off track specifically accounts for you going off track and gaining some kind of time. If you get 3 of them, it's an automatic drive-through, I believe, on LFM. The move you just saw that I made there, I'm actually quite proud of. I recognized that both of us were going deep into the penultimate corner, so what I decided to do was instead drop it down into first gear, take up the inside, and then make my way around the final hairpin to gain E4. Jumping forward a couple of laps, disaster strikes for me as I end up clipping the lip of that corner. If you haven't driven around this track, it's really easy to do that if you're trying to be too aggressive there. Since that corner is a fairly fast corner and it leads onto a long straight, it becomes really enticing to give yourself as good of a run as possible and cutting that corner way too sharply as I did there. Since I slammed backwards into the wall, you can see the driver rear side is just completely gone. The suspension is completely gone, and it's really hard to balance the car to make it go straight. Giving it any sort of power just makes it pull to the right hand side. My main concern at this point is to get it back to the pits as fast as possible, to lose as little as possible in terms of time, but also not to have anybody slam into the back of me. Luckily, we're able to make it back to the pits without pretty much any incident happening other than just trying to keep off the racing line. And as I pull in for the pit stop, the game decides it wants to do this kind of jittery, jumping, stuttering thing. So I'm not sure what that's all about, but if you do know how to fix that, please let me know down below. After the pit stop, my first priority is to, of course, slam into the wall to perform a quick durability test to make sure that the pit crew is doing their job correctly. What then precedes the pit stop is pretty much your conventional outlap, just trying to get back into the race. Unfortunately, at this point, because the track is so short and laps are so quick, they're pretty much just over a minute, I end up back in 9th place with essentially everybody else on the lead lap except for myself. And I don't exactly do myself any sort of favor trying to go around these corners, trying to be super aggressive to catch up and just causing myself to waste more time. On the next lap, which basically turns out to be the final lap, we're coming around the last 2 corners. And it's pretty much apparent at this point that obviously you're not going to catch anybody here, so just take the not last position and hold on to it for dear life. Not that there's really any danger of me losing that. We come across a line in P9, so starting from P2, ending up in P9 was an absolute disastrous race. For the next race, the AMS2/LFM gods decided they were going to throw us into a completely drenched track for the qualifying session. And this just highlights exactly how little grip the car has. As you can see, I'm struggling around some of these corners and to keep it going straight while applying any sort of power, which is hard enough to do already when the car has grip to begin with. Now, this taught me a few valuable lessons about AMS2 and about paying attention to the LFM setups for races. On LFM itself, this race was set as a random weather event, so it really could be anything from sun to snow as far as I'm aware. And it also really highlighted for me the handling characteristics of AMS2 in the wet. Now I know there's a wet dry line, but it just seemed like any sort of line you tried to choose had basically zero grip, so it was kind of just a matter of who could apply throttle the smoothest, as well as not coax the car into any sort of slide. This is super relevant for this corner right here. As you can see, I kind of hit the curb and knocked the car a little bit off balance, and unless you're super careful, it's almost impossible to recover from. After that slide, I decided to call it quits for the qualifying session, qualifying in P2. Luckily for the race, it is completely bone dry and sunny, so we don't really have to worry about anybody having super slides or having to really pay attention to throttle application. I mean, you always do, but not so much having to stress it here. Coming into T1, can we do a better job? Kind of, yes, absolutely not. I don't know what you want to call that. This time we were kind of able to make the corner and only dropped 1 position overall instead of 9, so that's a win. And I don't know if the guy behind me tried to follow me through that corner or if there was a bit of an incident, but in either case, it's a very do at your own risk kind of maneuver to follow me through any sort of corner on any kind of track. After settling down and jockeying into position, my game plan turns to just keeping up with the now P2 at this point and trying to pull away from the pack behind. However, we're going to be given a little bit of a gimme here around turn 3 or turn 4, whichever you want to call this. P2 ends up spinning, which allows us to take full advantage of that and get P2 back. However, a couple of laps later, I'm going to be making the same mistakes this time around the final hairpin. And I end up accidentally engaging 4x4 mode, thinking that there might be some kind of hill climb bonus to this race. Luckily, I was able to build up a bit of a gap before that incident, so I didn't lose any positions there. But it also seems that I never learned my lesson truly, because now on lap 10, which is about 6 laps later, I do the exact same thing, this time not engaging 4x4 mode. This spin also taught me about AMS's handling characteristics. As you can see, trying to go straight again, I end up completely spinning out into the wall. Anytime you touch grass, it's going to be completely detrimental to you, so both in real life and in the sim apparently. Zero grip there. I end up spinning into the wall. My guess is the dirty tires on the right hand side caused me to spin, which then combined with the relative low turning angle, which caused me to go into the grass a second time and just wasting a bunch of time. Now, not all is lost, as I do lose P2 to that, and I do try and make up some time to catch back up, opting to take a track warning to give myself a much better run down the back straight. This would only really do so much for me, as on the next corner, while I am closing the gap, I decide to try and Tokyo drift my way around, again hitting that grass and then having absolutely no grip The minute you touch grass, it's a problem. After I collect myself, at this point I know for a fact I'm not going to be catching P2 for the rest of the race, as the position that I was just in was the most optimal position for me to be in to be able to catch and potentially overtake P2 on the remaining couple of laps that were left. But after that slide, they were completely gone, and the only thing left for me to do was to focus on closing out the rest of the race without any more incidents, which we're able to do, crossing the line in P3. Again, not optimal, but given what happened, I'll take it anyway. A podium is a podium. After that race, I was pretty annoyed and mad at myself for spinning out not once, not twice, but thrice in a single race, which, if I'm being honest, you can almost expect one spin from me in a race, depending on the situation and car track combo. But at a certain point, you have to take a look in the mirror and kind of face reality of that was just not a good race, and what can we learn from that? So what I ended up doing was realizing that I was really worked up and I didn't want to join any more races, because realistically, in that kind of mindset, you're not thinking clearly and you're not performing at the optimal level at which you can. That realization allowed me to kind of go off and spend a couple of hours waiting for the next F3 specific race. This proved to be more than enough time to take a step back, take some deep breaths, and approach this race with a much clearer mind and a much happier mindset. All of that would then come together into this qualifying lap, which ended up being my best qualifying lap at this point, coming across the line with a 1:08.6. Now I'm about a second off pace compared to the leaders here, but you know what, after all that's given, I will take that, and maybe P3 on race 3 will be the superstition that I need to help me get through T1 cleanly, as now I'm on the inside of the track as opposed to outside. Here we go, let's see if the superstitions are real. Folks, we did it. We got through T1 on lap 1 cleanly without any incidents. That's how you know that this is going to be a good race. Already you can see a few different packs forming just a few corners into this race. We've got the front runners that I'm luckily at the back of or a part of, and then you have another group of cars just behind me, and then some spread out groups, as I'm guessing there were some incidents going into T1 or T2. Being a part of this pack, I'm not going to get too delusional to think that I'm going to be able to outpace these guys suddenly or be able to get around them. But what I am going to do is follow them and pick up on some of their driving cues to give myself a little bit of an advantage going around this course. And while I'm doing that, you can see P2 actually bumps P1 a little bit and causes him to spin. Now, it's not an outright murder, it's more of a manslaughter kind of deal, but at the same time, I'm not going to complain. That puts me up into P2 behind the front runner. Even if I am a little bit slower than him, I'm hoping he can pull me through a little bit, and it definitely does help only having to worry about one car instead of multiple. Speaking of worrying about multiple cars, we come across this back marker who does a phenomenal job as a back marker. Just simply pulls to the inside of the track off the racing line and allows both of us to go past him without any sort of incident. Unfortunate for me, however, is because he is a good back marker, he also does not pose any sort of interference with the guy behind me. So we have the racer that qualified in P1 and is incredibly quick, now actively hunting me down without anything in his way. The one thing I also failed to do during this race is keep tabs on exactly how close P3 is to me. In a single lap, he was able to close about a second difference, which makes sense considering the qualifying times and general lap times if you can think about it that way. However, he took me by surprise at this point as I looked in my rear view and thought, oh, where did you come from? That's the problem that I have during some of these races, is I become a little bit too complacent and too passive with my lap times. I know for a fact I'm not going to catch the guy in front, but I don't think about the guy behind catching up to me in such a manner. Let me know if you have a similar issue when it comes to racing in this kind of position and what you do to help mitigate the problems that come along with that. At this point, my game plan is to see if I can actually defend against him. The problem with that is that there's still a lot of race left here, so it's not going to be the most optimal to be defending really hard the whole time. And the other thing that I'm wary of is if he's going to end up killing me trying to get past me after mounting frustration. If I continue to defend super hard, knowing that both of us know that he's a lot faster than me around this course. Switching to the trackside cam, you can see just how close he is to me at this point, so he's basically pushing me here. And that prompts me to make the executive decision to lift off the throttle and let him pass. I figure at this point in the race, being only 5 to 6 laps in, it's going to be a lot more advantageous at this point to let him pass and have him pull me away from anybody else who's behind than try to defend him off the entire time where that will only cause both of us to lose tons of time and allow the people behind us to catch back up. This also removes a ton of pressure off of me, which should help reduce the amount of mistakes made, and it allows me to sink back into my observer role to see where he's making up a ton of time against me. I would try my best to maintain my distance to him, but he was simply just faster, and as the laps dragged on and as we continued to finish more laps, he ended up just pulling away from me, now putting the gap up to about 4 seconds, with no real hope left in sight to continue to monitor how he's driving. This effectively means that I am now in a world all my own, in my own little bubble, 4 seconds or so to the person in front, and 6 to 8 to 11 seconds depending on what the relative wants to show to the person behind. While I am grateful for the clean air to allow myself to push a little bit harder, I'm also scared of making the same mistakes from the previous races and throwing away what is essentially going to be a good position. Earlier we had an example of a phenomenal back marker, and now we're going to see an example of a little bit more of a muddier back marker in my opinion. I'm not 100% sure if this back marker knew that I wasn't directly racing him or if he was trying to give me space here as he ducks towards the inside, but it seems more like he was trying to defend this corner. Knowing that most likely if I try to go in around him, we're just going to both be killed, I ended up backing off for that corner, letting him go through and trying to catch him on the next few corners. I do end up getting a better run than him into the penultimate corner, however he does end up turning in on me and causes a bit of contact. Luckily there was no miraculous disaster that happened from this. As we take another look, I simply just defended the corner, he ends up bumping me and he ends up getting pushed a little wide because of it. But ultimately this does slow both of us down a little bit, as you can see the pack behind starting to gather, which was comprised of both back markers relative to me as well as the guy that is actively hunting me down, now only 0.7 seconds behind. The other odd thing here is that the back marker that's now alongside me is the former leader that was way ahead of everybody to start this race. I'm not sure if he pulled in for damage or if it was for fuel, but at some point he must have pulled into the pits and everybody kind of passed him, because he was in P1 and now all of a sudden he's in P5 making his way back up the grid. This will also denote the second time in this race where I take a look in my rearview mirror and think, oh, how the hell did you get there? As you can see, the now P3 pretty much under a half second behind, definitely within slipstream range, so it's a little bit daunting to take a look at that, knowing that I originally had about a 6-second lead, all of a sudden evaporated, and now he's right on my tail and I need to defend. I was able to do so, however, around the closing couple of corners that we had left. We had this corner, we had the 2 hairpins, and I'm really trying to keep it towards the inside, making my car as wide as possible so that he can't get around me. And my focus is solely on trying my damnedest to run away from him, especially as we come on to this front straight here. I'm pretty confident in my ability, or at least so I thought, because of the fact that I was ahead of this guy and had a pretty big gap, that I might be able to lose him around a few of these corners. And I was able to defend for a whole lap like this until I make this mistake into T1/T2. At that point, I realized, okay, you know what? He is in my rearview mirror enough for me to pull attention away from what I'm trying to do. I'm just going to let him go and see if he can pull me around. But while I do so, jump scare for you, as we find P7 facing the wrong way after that corner. You might think that that might have been a too passive a move to let him go like that, but the way that I figured was there was 4 laps left. I can probably have another passing opportunity since I'm pretty close to him. However, I just found that it was really hard to keep pace with him enough to put myself in a position where I can pass. Speaking of passing though, we do end up passing P1, who was completely stopped on that corner. It didn't look like he had spun or anything along those lines, so I'm wondering if he either lost connection or if he just quit out knowing that he was going to win the race because he was so far ahead. Either way, this stokes the fire that's already under me to try and get past the guy in front, because now if I pass him, it's for P1, not just P2. This also happens at the most dramatic time, since this is the final lap of the race, literally for all of the marbles here. At this point, I'm digging into myself as deeply as possible to try and squeeze out any sort of time I can out of my lap. The problem is, at this point, I already have 2 out of 3 track warnings, so I have to be careful about the corner that leads onto this back straight, which does cause me to lose a little bit of time, and it does start looking up in that back straight, pulling up to him closer through the draft. But credit where credit is due, he is able to make that car super wide and take that corner a lot faster than I am, which puts me in a very awkward spot if I wanted to try and do something crazy like dive bomb, but I'm just simply too far away, so all of those options are completely removed from me to begin with. He does seem to go a little bit deep into the final hairpin, so I thought I might have a chance of getting him at the line, but I have a mini moment that completely kills my momentum, making me settle for P2, but I can't complain too much. We finally had a race where nothing went completely catastrophically wrong. We were able to learn some valuable lessons, and we finished one position higher than we qualified. Overall, that sounds like a pretty good race. This was also a fun little moment of both of us acknowledging that that was a great race. We both revved engines back and forth and kind of kept together on the cooldown lap, waiting for the rest of the race to finish. It's nice to see the sportsmanship as well as have another racer acknowledge that you probably put them under pressure. And it's also nice to know that there's a little bit of some goofery happening on LFM and it's not just me. So big props to the Sanchez, and if you do end up seeing this video, congrats on the race win and thank you for indulging me in some shenanigans post-race. He seems like a good guy and even gave me a good race in the post-game chat. With that being said, if you made it this far into the video, a million thank yous for staying this long. You could be anywhere on the internet, but the fact that you have found and stayed on my little slice means the world to me. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit the like button down below, as well as consider hitting the subscribe button if you feel obligated to. Likewise, if you did not enjoy the video, let me know down below why. I'm always looking to improve the content on this channel, whether that's through the driving portrayed here or through the content itself. So let me know what you think, as well as the things you would like to see on this channel moving forward. As always, links will be in the description below if you want to go check out my Discord or any other of my social media channels, and be on the lookout for more content coming up relatively soon. I've been Cyber Fury, you guys have been awesome. I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.